So I'm Mark. I'm going to be presenting Blender add-on development and breakdowns to you. So I'll start with why learning Python in the first place. Well, it's used in web development, artificial intelligence, so it's got other uses than just using for Blender add-ons. It's also used in other 3D packages, Maya, Houdini, Substance Designer. So this is the second slide, and I've already mentioned using Maya. It's sometimes even a requirement in the 3D job market. Like I found this on ArtStation. One of the things they ask for is an aptitude in scripting, using programming languages like Max, Script, Python, C#. And Python is an object-oriented programming language. So the class has the car here with methods for refuel, get fuel, and attributes as well. So it's a really good way of bundling a lot of Blender Python operators to a class and then calling them from the menu. Some Python myths, and some people say it's difficult to learn. I would say not compared to C and C++. Python's even taught in some schools to children. And another one's a half myth. Some people say Python's fast. This is kind of true, but in terms of sheer execution speed, C and C++ can be a lot faster. And I think that's why some Blender features require special builds and can't be added to Blender via an add-on. Like the cloth brush, for example, was one of them quite recently. And another myth I hear is Blender is written 100% in Python. That's just not true. It's got three main programming languages. C is for Blender startup and shutdown. C++ is the language used for the physics simulations, Cycles render engine, and even third-party render engines use C and C++, like LuxCore, for example. Python's the one they use for a lot of the interface, and a lot of the add-ons for like import and export are written in Python. So before you begin developing add-ons for Blender, I'd recommend opening up Blender Preferences, and go to the interface and enable Python Tooltips Developer Extras, and go down to the Add-ons panel. All of these add-ons in the Development tab, they're already within Blender, and they're all really handy, like for Icon Viewer and Edit Operator Source. I'll be showing you how to use that in a minute. So this is the first add-on I made for Blender, MakePillow. Not a very imaginative name, I know, but it does what it says. It uses cloth simulation and a force field to generate a pillow. So I'm going to show you how that's made. So the Blender add-on has to have a init.py file, and they're required to make Python treat the directories as containing packages. It's done to prevent directories with a common name, such as a string, from unintentionally hiding valid modules that occur later on in the module search path. It gets a bit technical, but all you need to know is the add-on has to have that init.py file. And the add-on has to have the BL info within the code. That's how Blender finds information about the add-on and where to put it. Like, is it a development add-on, or is it add mesh, add curve? The add-on has to import the Blender Python module. You can also build Blender just as a Python module, but I can't really think of a reason why you need to do that unless you're a mathematician want to use Blenders for visualizing stuff. And the add-on has to register and unregister its classes as well. So here's an example of BL info. It's got the name, the description, what it does, tells you where to find it. It tells the user where to find the add-on. And here's our first class for making the pillow. It's, as you can see here, the BL ID name, that's the one Blender will use for calling the function object to MakePillow. And define the execute function here is, well, just all these Blender operators put in a single class. You'll notice as well, this is one thing that tricked me when I was making it. Line 51 and 57, You'll notice it enters into edit mode. So all these lines before that have to, all the lines after edit mode, they have to be operators within the edit mode of Blender. Then after that, go back into object mode to apply the modifier, because you can't apply a modifier in edit mode. And this is also how it was made. It's literally just copying and pasting in from the scripting tab, which looked a little different when I made it back in like 2.78 or whatever it was. But yeah, you can actually just copy and paste your operators right into the class here. And then when that's finished, it'll tell Blender that the operator is finished successfully. So it's read downwards. Read downwards, and if it reaches the return finished, that means the operator is finished without an error. Then this is a bit Oxer Vision, somebody who came along and added this part to MakePillow. They just put it in the Add Mesh menu with the icon MakePillow. Another thing is the MakePillow icon, mod cloth. If Blender ever changes the name of the icons, it won't to something else, and it's still looking for mod cloth, it won't actually appear in the menu. So that's something to look out for if you're making your own add-on. And this is just it registering the operator, appending it into the menu, and unregistering it as well. So it's how it uninstalls. This is my other add-on, FS Tools, made for working quickly in Fullscreen. I can't really work in Blender without it now. I need it. If I ever have to install Blender on another machine, the first thing I do is go download my own add-on. It works great with other add-ons like HardOps. Even though it's not a hard surface modeling add-on, it still works well with the Hops helper, so you don't ever really need to go into the properties panel anymore. The BL info is mostly the same as MakePillow, just a few differences. It uses a motion tracking pie I got from Sebastian Koenig. The other differences were importing the operating system module and the subprocess module. So that's a Python module that gives a way of handling operating system dependent functionality. If you need an operator to behave a certain way on a certain operating system, you need that module. And the subprocess as well allows the add-on to spawn subprocesses, handle input and output errors, return any error codes from them. So this is the first pie menu that it draws when you press Alt and Q. And when you press Alt and Q, it's just calling the Blender ID name pie empty init. And then it would spawn this, which is just a pie menu with a lot of other pie menus within it. Yeah, here's one of my favorite things about it, is the editor menu. Being able to just quickly go from sequence editor, view the editor, or the graph editor, back to the 3D viewport, of course. This is another pie menu that's within FS Tools render tools. And sometimes it's easier to break down your operators into classes, because the copy and pasting from before that I showed you, it wasn't working. So what you do is just create a new class, EV op for like EV render operator, copy and paste the operator into there, and just kind of repeat the same process for cycles and workbench. And this is it in action. Here's another one, like some custom operators I added. Yeah, you can actually order food within this operator. It'll just open up Firefox and take you to like order food online in the Google search. Community menu just takes you to the Blender homepage, a few other things. Quick cycles is an operator that just puts all the light bounces really low, which isn't ideal for a lot of things, but it speeds up cycles in preview mode. Yeah, an example of how the another operator I had there was the depth of field add. Literally just adds an empty sphere with the name of DOF, depth of field. So yeah, you can see that there, line 237. That's the operator for that. And notice it's using the Blender ID name for the class. So by operator add DOF is the same as the Blender ID name. So here's some tips and tricks. You can actually copy and paste like a Python command just by right-clicking or left-clicking on some parts of the menu. You'll get this. Just remember to remove the BPY ops and the brackets as well, because it doesn't need that if you do it that way. Edit operator source is the add-on I mentioned before. Sometimes you right-click on a menu and go to edit source, it'll take you straight to the line of code. It's within Blender. It's sometimes really handy for finding like existing menus that you want to add to your own add-on. And remember to use version control. I use GitHub because, well, it's widely used. It's the first one I use, so I'll just use that. And it's important to use because if you start making changes to your own add-on and you overwrite your own file, and sometimes it doesn't work, then you've still got a good version on GitHub you can still use. So start from that. You should also read up on Blender Python style guide for best practices for coding, just things like using 4 spaces for indentation, not using tabs, spaces around operators, camel case. I'm probably breaking some of those rules, but okay. Oh yeah, so for this talk, I made an example add-on, kind of combining everything I've just shown. It's available on GitHub, Mark C B3D example add-on. I think that's actually hard ups or a build tool working through Boolean there. So as you can see, it's just adding a sphere plane and a bevel cube. So it's a cube added with bevel modifiers applied. Well, not applied, but bevel modifiers on it. And here's the classes for that. The Blender ID name is object add sphere plane, object add bevel cube. And here's the operators for that. So as you can see, it's copying and pasting again, kind of a theme here. Adding a plane, scaling up, adding a sphere. You can see it's just anything you want to automate in Blender, you can just copy and paste it usually in there. And I don't know how many people know this as well, but there's templates you can use within Blender in the scripting tab, just Python UI menu simple. That's the one I used for the example add-on and just expanded a little bit on that. So I hope that example add-on is useful to some people. This is how I register classes. Again, there's probably a better way of doing it, but this works for me. So classes I declare here, simple custom menu, sphere plane. And I define a register function for that key maps as well. Just do that. And for classes and classes, just register all the classes. And this is adding the key map. So it also shows you the example add on how to add like Alt and Shift for key maps. You don't have to add it as a key map, but it helps. Because you can actually just call the operator from the F3 search bar as well if you need. Then it's got to unregister as well, so it's just like the same thing in reverse order. So here's some recommended free add-ons of mine. Animation Nodes is the only one you've got to download from GitHub. Modifier Tools is good if you need to apply modifiers in a lot of meshes. Node Wrangler, I've been saying for years this should just be default Blender behavior anyway. It shouldn't need to be an add-on. Build Tool and Carver are pretty good, free add-ons with Blender for hard surface modeling, and loop tools as well. So yeah, recap and conclusion. So we've talked about what makes up a Blender add-on, files you need inside, why the BL info is important, so Blender knows where to put the add-on in the add-ons tab. What to import into the add-on. The thought process behind pie menu versus layout, I think I skipped that bit, but when making FS tools, I needed to decide, like, does it need to be a layout menu or a pie menu? So I thought, well, pie menus only have like 8 options for you to have. So, but layout menus have like 10 or as menus you can add. How to cheat and copy and paste your way, registering and unregistering, and key map handling as well. Okay, so thanks to everyone watching live, Blender Foundation, all the organizers, everyone who's come here. Here's my links as well if you want to check out my ArtStation, my GitHub, or Twitter. If you have a question after this is all done and over with, probably best to reach out to me on Twitter. The messages are open if you need. So thanks. I hope you've enjoyed my talk. And I think I'm going to have to hand it back to Alex.